She broke your heart, walked away like you meant nothing, and left you questioning everything. We've all felt that silence, that cold, empty exit. Where love once lived, maybe she ghosted you. Maybe she replaced you like you were just a placeholder. Or maybe she acted like you were nothing more than a temporary option. And now, here she is, back again, trying to rekindle what she destroyed. But why? Why does she come back after the damage is done? And more importantly, how should you respond? Because if you don't handle this moment right, you'll fall right back into the same trap. But if you play it right, you flip the script, you turn the tables, you win. Here's the truth most men never learn. Her return is not your reward, it's your test. Most men, they beg for answers, they chase closure, they give her the power again. But Stoic men, they become the closure. They stay calm, they stay grounded. They choose self-respect over temporary comfort. Because this moment, it's not about her, it's about you. Who you are now, who you're becoming. So ask yourself this: are you strong enough to not need her anymore? Because real power is the ability to walk away with your dignity intact. This is the mindset of the unshakable man. A man who doesn't flinch when someone leaves and doesn't fold when they return. When you hold your ground, you don't just protect your heart, you reclaim your identity. You stop wondering if you're enough, because now you know. So if you're done chasing people who can't keep you and ready to become someone they'll never forget, start this journey. Now drop a 1 if you've lived this. Drop a 2 if you've already leveled up. Because next, we're breaking down why she comes back after hurting you without giving away your power. 1. Why she left. It wasn't always about you. When a woman walks away after you've given her your time, your heart, and your unwavering presence, it can feel like a deep and personal failure. It's easy to spiral into self-blame, questioning your worth, your actions, and everything you could have done differently. But here's what many men never realize. Her departure may have had little to do with you, and everything to do with what was unfolding inside her. By the time you reach your mid-30s or 40s, you've likely built something solid: a career, emotional maturity, a life rooted in discipline and values. You may have thought that your stability would be enough to anchor her, but women don't just respond to external success. They respond to emotional resonance, how they feel about themselves when they're around you. And sometimes that feeling gets clouded not because of who you are, but because of unresolved storms inside her. Some women leave not because they stopped caring, but because they were emotionally overwhelmed. When feelings become too intense or too vulnerable, the instinct for some is not to lean in, but to run. She might not have had the tools to process the depth of the connection. It wasn't that you demanded too much. It was that she couldn't hold space for what was real. The fear of intimacy, the fear of being seen fully, can make people retreat, especially if they've never felt safe confronting their own emotional patterns. Then there's the world around her. We live in a time of constant comparison and temptation. Social media paints illusions of perfect relationships, exciting adventures, and better options just a swipe away. The pull towards something seemingly more exciting, more validating, more new, can make even a solid relationship feel ordinary in her eyes. But that perception isn't about you losing value. It's about her mistaking dopamine hits for meaningful connection. And perhaps the most frustrating reason of all, she may have mistaken your steadiness for staleness. Your consistency, your loyalty, your presence became something she could count on so deeply that she forgot its value. When you were always there, always supportive, she may have confused comfort with complacency. In losing the contrast, she lost her sense of desire, not because you became less, but because she stopped looking at you with the same appreciation. The truth is, her walking away wasn't necessarily a verdict on your masculinity, your strength, or your love. Sometimes it's simply a mirror reflecting her own emotional immaturity, her confusion, or her inability to handle real closeness. Her exit wasn't the end of your story. In fact, it may have been the beginning of a deeper one for both of you, a test of how you respond, a call to step even further into your self-worth. Not to chase, but to rise. Because when someone leaves, it often has less to do with your shortcomings and more to do with the depth they were never ready to meet. 2. Why she comes back. The quiet pull of what felt real. There's a strange silence that follows your absence. At first, she may welcome it. The world outside seems full of possibilities, new faces, fresh excitement, distractions that whisper promises of something more thrilling, something less complicated. But as time stretches on and the noise fades, what remains isn't fulfillment. It's an echo, a hollow space where something once meaningful used to live. And that's when it begins, the quiet pull of what felt real. She didn't expect you to disappear so completely. She may have assumed you'd still be there in the background, waiting like a dim light she could flick on when she wanted. But you didn't stay. You didn't reach out. You didn't chase. And in that stillness, something inside her begins to shift. The illusion of control starts to crumble. What once felt like power, walking away, replacing you, staying silent, now feels like loss. A loss she didn't calculate, a loss that feels heavier the longer she carries it. What she begins to miss isn't just your presence. It's the version of herself that existed beside you. The safety she felt in your presence. The unspoken trust in the way you listened. The calm you brought to her chaos. The way you looked at her when the world demanded nothing. With you, she didn't have to perform. She didn't have to compete. She could just be, and that kind of space is rare. Life, in its quiet way, has a habit of humbling those who chase illusions. The men who came after you may have been charming, fun, or different, but something was always missing. They didn't see her with the same depth. They didn't challenge her to grow, nor did they hold her the way you did, with strength, presence, and peace. Slowly she begins to realize that it wasn't just the relationship she left behind. It was a connection rooted in something deeper than thrill. It was realness, and realness doesn't come around often. Her return isn't always about love in the traditional sense. Sometimes it's about recognition, a sudden awareness that what she had with you wasn't ordinary, that what she felt in your presence was clarity, even if it scared her. And now that the world has shown her noise without meaning, novelty without depth, she aches for the stillness you gave so effortlessly. She doesn't come back because she simply misses you. She comes back because in a world full of temporary highs, you made her feel grounded. Because after everything, you became more than a memory. You became the measure. And the further she strayed from you, the more she realized nothing else ever made her feel quite the same. 3. The mistakes men make when she returns, and how they silence their power. When she comes back, something stirs deep inside you. There's a flicker of hope, a quiet voice whispering that maybe this is the turning point. Maybe her return means she finally understands what she lost. It's tempting to believe that her presence is a sign of redemption, a sign that things will finally fall into place. But this is where many men, even the strongest, stumble, because the desire for resolution, for peace, for love reborn, can cloud your judgment and mute your power. By the time you're in your 30s or 40s, you've likely endured your share of emotional wounds and come out the other side stronger, more compassionate, more introspective. You've learned to forgive, to extend empathy, to be the bigger man. But when a woman who hurt you returns, that same strength can become your weakness if it's not rooted in self-respect. One of the most common mistakes is forgiving too quickly, not because she's shown remorse, but because deep down you crave closure. You want the pain to make sense. You want to believe she's come back for the right reasons. And so, without realizing it, you offer her access to your life before she's earned it. Before you've even taken time to ask yourself if it's what you truly want. Another mistake is over-explaining your absence. You tell her where you've been, what you've been feeling, how hard it's been without her, thinking this will rebuild the bridge. But what it often does is hand the power back to her. She becomes the one who decides what happens next, while you wait for permission to be wanted again. And worst of all, you may find yourself asking questions she hasn't even considered answering. Why did you leave? Did you meet someone else? What changed your mind? You search for logic in a decision that was driven by emotion, insecurity, or fear, and you come up empty. Here's the truth. If she walked away from emotional depth once, chances are she hasn't developed the clarity you're hoping for now. Seeking validation or understanding from someone who ran from the weight of connection won't give you peace. It will only dilute your strength. The power lies not in getting answers, but in how you respond to uncertainty. In holding boundaries that protect the man you've become. The man who remains composed, who doesn't over-explain, who doesn't beg for clarity. That man commands respect. That man isn't cold. He's centered. He knows his value doesn't decrease just because someone temporarily forgot it. So when she returns, let your response reflect growth, not longing. Let your stillness speak more than your words, because power isn't in proving your worth to her. It's in knowing you never had to. 4. The Stoic way to respond. Calm, clear, unapologetically centered. There's a quiet strength in stillness, a kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. And when she returns after leaving you behind, the most powerful response is not found in passionate words or emotional fireworks. It's found in your calm, in your ability to remain centered, undisturbed, and rooted in who you've become without her. You don't need to act cold to prove anything. Stoicism is not about shutting down your heart. It's about mastering your emotions so they don't master you. It's the art of carrying depth without being pulled under by it. And when she reappears, what matters most isn't how you feel about her return. It's how aligned you are with your peace and whether letting her back in disturbs that peace. The first thing most men overlook is the pause. The urge to respond immediately is strong. After all, part of you might have been waiting for this moment. But a man grounded in himself knows that his time, energy, and attention are not given on impulse. He takes a breath, not to play games, but to assess the cost. Is this interaction about reconnecting or reopening a wound? Does this conversation serve your growth or tempt your regression? When you do choose to respond, do so without the weight of expectation. Don't offer anger, but don't offer warmth either. Speak from a place of calm neutrality, because that contrast between the storm she once created and the stillness you now embody is what unsettles her the most. It forces her to see what she lost, not just in you, but in the version of herself that once felt at peace in your presence. A mistake many men make in this moment is falling back into the old emotional rhythm, but you're not the same man she walked away from. And so, the way you engage must reflect that evolution. Instead of diving into nostalgia or trying to understand her reasons, shift the frame of the interaction. Ask her, not in bitterness, but in clarity, what she's truly looking for. Not because you owe her a second chance, but because she needs to know that access to your life now requires more than just an apology. It requires purpose, direction, and intention. And as you navigate this moment, remind yourself of everything you've built in her absence. Growth is not just what you say, it's what she feels when she steps back into your orbit. She should feel the change in the way you carry yourself, in the silence you no longer fill, in the boundaries you now honor. You're no longer the man trying to prove his worth. You're the man who knows it, and that changes everything. One powerful way to anchor this mindset is to reflect, intentionally and honestly, on how your life has improved since she left. Write it down, not to justify anything to her, but to affirm it to yourself. What new habits have you built? What peace have you reclaimed? What parts of yourself have you rediscovered now that you're no longer performing for her presence? Because ultimately, your response to her return is not about controlling the outcome. It's about preserving the integrity of the man you've become. You don't need to reject her with coldness, nor do you need to welcome her with open arms. You simply need to hold your ground. Let her feel that your world no longer revolves around her, but continues to move forward with quiet purpose. That's Stoic masculinity in its purest form. Not reaction, but resolution. Not bitterness, but balance. And when you meet her return with that energy, you don't just shift the dynamic, you redefine it. 5. Should you take her back? Ask your spirit, not your loneliness. There's a voice that speaks in the silence after her return. It doesn't shout. It whispers, softly but seductively. It tells you she's changed, that maybe this time will be different, that being with her, even if imperfect, might be better than being alone. And if you're not careful, that voice will convince you to trade your hard-earned peace for a familiar ache, disguised as hope. But deep down, you know better. There's a clarity that only comes through solitude. When she left, you were forced to face yourself. The silence she left behind became a space you filled with reflection, growth, even pain, but pain that matured you. And now, in her reappearance, you stand at a crossroads not between her and loneliness, but between progress and temptation. The question of whether to take her back isn't answered by emotion, it's answered by alignment. You must ask not whether you miss her, but whether her presence now matches the life you've begun building without her. Does she return as a partner to your purpose or as a distraction from it? Begin with the truth of her absence. Why did she walk away? Was it immaturity, fear of commitment, emotional confusion? Or was it something more self-centered, like chasing validation or greener illusions? And more importantly, has anything truly changed since then? People don't transform overnight. Words are easy, but growth is slow, visible, and often uncomfortable. If her return is wrapped only in apologies and longing but no tangible evidence of evolution, then what she's offering is nostalgia, not partnership. Look at her consistency, not in days or weeks, but over time. Is she showing up with patience, with effort, with clarity? Or is she leaning into your warmth just long enough to feel something again, only to disappear once the void is filled? Is she looking for healing or simply comfort? There's a difference, and your spirit can feel it if you're still enough to listen. And then there's the most important question: how does her presence affect your peace? Does having her back in your life bring clarity, or does it reignite the anxiety you had to work so hard to silence? True connection doesn't create chaos, it creates calm. If her energy leaves you questioning your worth, second-guessing your direction, or compromising your boundaries, then you are not being loved. You are being destabilized. The truth is, some people come back not because they truly see you, but because they miss how you made them feel. And that's not love, It's need. If you allow yourself to be needed without being valued, you invite the same cycle that nearly broke you the first time. Let your decision be guided not by the ache of missing her, but by the strength you found without her. If she adds energy to your vision, if she moves in rhythm with your growth, if she speaks to the man you are now, not the man she left behind, then maybe, just maybe, there is something worth exploring. But if she brings only memory without momentum, beauty without stability, emotion without direction, then let her remain a chapter, not a comeback. You are not the same man who once waited for her love. You are a man who has tasted his own wholeness. And from that place, you no longer choose based on fear of solitude, but on loyalty to your future. There's something profoundly awakening about being left by someone you once gave your heart to. At first, it shakes you to your core. You question your worth. You retrace every moment, every word, looking for where you went wrong. But with time, and only through stillness, you begin to see what you couldn't in the chaos. Her leaving wasn't necessarily a rejection of who you are. In many ways, it was a reflection of what she couldn't yet hold. I believe true strength isn't about clinging to someone who once made you feel wanted. It's about holding on to yourself when they walk away. That kind of depth, that unshakable self-respect. It doesn't just come from experience. It comes from choosing not to shrink when someone else retreats. It comes from standing still in your worth, even when you're hurting. The lesson I carry with me is this: emotional maturity isn't just about how we love others. It's about how we protect the man we're becoming. When she comes back, maybe she's seeking comfort, maybe clarity, maybe validation, but that doesn't mean she's ready to give what the new you now requires. And it's your responsibility to know the difference. Because in the end, peace isn't found in her return. It's found in how you choose to respond. And that decision, that defines everything. The Stoic conclusion: be the man who doesn't just survive, but ascends. By the time a man reaches his late 30s or early 40s, he carries with him more than memories of love lost. He carries wisdom earned, values tested, and a growing sense of the legacy he's building. Heartbreak, by then, is no longer just about pain. It becomes a teacher. And the way he responds to it reveals not just who he is, but who he is becoming. When she returns, it may feel like the resolution you've been waiting for, but often the true power lies not in welcoming her back, but in recognizing that you no longer need what once broke you. The temptation to return to the familiar is strong. The pull of what was, of what almost became, can feel intoxicating. But growth invites clarity, and clarity reminds you, peace isn't found in repeating old chapters. It's found in honoring how far you've come since you closed them. Stoicism doesn't demand coldness. It calls for control. It doesn't numb you to emotion. It teaches you to rise above its chaos. Her departure may have wounded you, and her return may stir the past. But how you respond now defines the future. You don't just survive what hurt you. You rise. You ascend, not to prove anything to her, but to remain true to the man you've worked so hard to become. In the end, the strongest men are not defined by who comes back, but by what they choose to allow back into their lives. They don't let the past dictate their path. They lead with clarity, self-respect, and a vision for the life they're building. True power lies in choosing yourself, even when it's hard. So stand firm, move forward with purpose, and remember, the future belongs to the man who refuses to settle for anything less than peace. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the Stoic Station channel for more wisdom and share it with a brother who needs to hear it.